Israel Update with Gadi and Mike Duran. Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It's been a year and 2 months, almost, minus 4 days since this war began. It is now the 3rd of December, 2024. I'm Gadi in Tel Aviv, and Mike is looking for something in his office at the Hudson Institute in Washington, D.C. Mike, have you found what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay.
I needed to blow my nose. How do you like that? Doesn't that make for fantastic viewing?
That at least makes for a feeling of איך אומרים שירגישו בבית? Down home.
For feeling at home.
For feeling at home with the hosts of this prestigious show who have demonstrated they are also just mortals like you viewers.
My nose runs too.
I'll skip further jokes about that because we have a lot on our plate today. I can't say that that's a rare occasion, very tense days in Israel, really very tense until a countdown, basically, until the Trump assumes the presidency, because there's a feeling here that the enemies of Netanyahu inside the bureaucracy and elsewhere are thrashing around wildly in the hope of removing him before he gets a backwind from a new president. But first, Mike, let's hear what the headlines are.
Let's do that, but first, let's remember what our slogan is.
Our slogan is as sane as possible under the circumstances.
Exactly. And let's also just take a moment to enjoy this blue right here. Look at that. That's like an old postcards blue. Do you see that? For those of you who are listening, you can't see that beautiful blue in the Washington sky behind me.
Is that a result of the election, do you think?
I do, yeah. It's a morning in America. Peace through strength.
The sky is cleared.
The sky is clear. I can see clearly now. The rain is gone. Okay. Gadi, last Wednesday, as you know, just as I left Israel, a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah was enacted. The agreement was negotiated by the United States and France, and it calls for a complete implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, a Security Council resolution, by the way, that I played a small part in implementing. And drafting and implementing back in 2006.
You will tell us a little bit about that when we analyze the ceasefire.
Oh, someday, yeah. I don't know if we need to do it today, but yeah, I got some interesting stories about that. Now, come to think of it, anyway, which calls for the resolution calls for the full disarmament of Hezbollah below the Litani River. On Sunday, the Houthis from Yemen launched a ballistic missile toward central Israel. The missile was intercepted by Israel's Arrow missile defense system. Also on Sunday, a draft law began making its way through the Knesset, which absolves members of the IDF and the defense establishment from responsibility for transferring classified material to the prime minister. The law is designed to protect Eli Feldstein from the harsh treatment that he has received in the judicial system, something that you and I talked about last time. I got some very nasty mail from friends about that, by the way. I won't tell you what they said about you, but you know that you are a controversial figure, Gadi.
Those friends are not of the right.
No, I have friends who are not of the right. Because I've been around for 62 years and I have had different stages of my life. The Attorney General called the law, quote, an improper political interference in the legal process due to the current climate around Feldstein's controversial clauses. Over the course of the last week, Gadi, Syrian rebels took Aleppo. They seized Aleppo, which is the financial hub of Syria, and they are now attempting to take Hama, another major city. The rebels are backed to one degree or another by Turkey, which is how I now say Turkey. On Monday, President-elect Trump posted on his social media that if the hostages held by Hamas are not released by Inauguration Day, he will take significant action against all of those responsible. He said that, and this is a direct quote, Gadi, those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America, unquote.
Wow, Hiroshima is on the way.
I have to say that brought a smile to my face. Finally, Gadi, an internal affairs investigation is roiling the police. The investigation is focusing on 3 officers who are close to National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. The first of those is Israel Prison Service Chief Commissioner Kobi Yacobi. He's suspected of obstructing a police investigation and for breach of trust. He was interrogated for 13 hours and released with restrictions on his activities. In addition to Yacobi, an assistant commander and a chief superintendent were also questioned. We have 3 things to talk about today, Gadi. I think we'll start with this one, and then we'll talk about the ceasefire in Lebanon and then what's going on in Syria. Do you? I'm assuming I haven't delved deeply into this Yacobi question, but I'm assuming that you have something to say about it.
Yeah, first of all, the name of one of the chief officers was just released a few minutes ago. A push from Amit Segal's telegram that the man is the
Amit Segal. You usually say Amit Segal, Mike, your favorite reporter in Israel.
Your favorite, it's not just reporter, journalist, analyst, pundit. The man in question is the head of the regional command of Judea and Samaria. His name is Avishai Mualem. And what is shaping up, Mike, is that this is a continuation of the Feldstein arrest. It seems that Shabak mostly, but also the state attorney and the Yoamashit, the attorney general, but she's not just an attorney general. It's supposed hard to explain to Americans. She's also the legal advisor to the government and basically the boss of Israel, because she has veto right, according to herself, on every policy of the government, because she represents what she says is the interpretation of the law. This is a question we've touched on. Maybe we should elaborate at some other point. But the question is, what are these forces doing now? And the fact that they are targeting the head of Shabas, the head of the incarceration service, and one of the chiefs of the police in Judea and Samaria, and that all this has to do with the Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, considered an extremist and, as you know, a target of the Biden administration. It's not incidental that these 2 people are targeted. For a very long time, Shabak has been the organ of the security services was the most dovish towards Arabs, not Israelis. They have insisted all the time that Jews should not go to the Temple Mount, that the conditions of security detainees, that is terrorists in Israeli jails, should not be touched because all hell would break loose. They were always in favor of economic relief to Gaza and other places. They, let me remind you, did not see it coming when the 7th of October erupted. Now, Itamar Ben-Gvir has a completely different policy. From the minute he got into the ministry, the most important thing he did was start cutting the enmities that the terrorist prisoners in Israeli jails have. It used to be a summer camp, Mike. People just don't know what it was. Not only could they get academic degrees, they were also incarcerated in machlakot, help me with the word.
I want to say divisions, not divisions, quarters. I can't find the word.
So people will understand, in the same quarters by their organizational affiliation. So all the Fatah people are together, all the Hamas people are together. They had almost unrestricted phone contact with the outside world, and so they could plan and operate.
Department. I think Machlaka would be department, right?
Ward. It would be ward.
Ward.
There is a warden in jail. I just remember. Yeah. So they were in wards according to organizational affiliation, and they had so much freedom that they could plan and not execute themselves, but command terrorist attacks. They had unrestricted. I mean, they had a very rich diet, and they also had outrageously access to female jailers. And there were huge scandals around this and what the jails allowed, the amount of sexual harassment that they allowed, sometimes leaving a woman warden, you know, in a ward full of terrorists. When Itamar Ben-Gvir came, he defied Shabak. And this is the crucial thing. He defied the whole policy of Shabak, and he turned their lives into the hell in these places. By hell, I don't mean anything illegal or torture. He just made it very, very unpleasant to be a terrorist jailed in an Israeli prison. And they began to fear Israeli prison. But the thing is that he defied Shabak. Same thing with Yamar Shai, the Judea and Samaria police. Under Itamar Ben-Gvir, they stopped their endless chasing of settlers, or what you call the youths of the hills. Is there a name for that in English? The younger
hilltop, they call it the hilltop youth. They call them
the hilltop youth, and started actually chasing terrorists more vigorously. They also set up a new unit for the Jordanian border, which became a major route for smuggling arms into Judea and Samaria. Shabak doesn't like to be defied. And so these people were arrested. Let me tell you how they arrested the chief of Israel's incarceration service. They stopped his convoy with armed guards, blocked his way, and jumped out of the cars, weapons out. Now, this is a guy who is accompanied by security, because if you are the head of the incarceration service, there is not one criminal in Israel that is looking for you, but rather many criminal organizations. So they almost broke into a firefight between his security personnel and the internal affairs unit, which stopped him. Why? They could have just called his office and says, please come to questionings. No, because they are attempting, or so it seems, to terrorize anyone who is defying them. And if you ever had some nightmares about an imaginary deep state, here you go. And the general interpretation here is that the targeting of Ben-Gvir is part and parcel of an attempt to take down the coalition. Now, this is becoming, some people are actually scared. Some people refuse to talk now. Some people from within the system stop talking to stop serving as sources for journalists. But others are just saying, look, they're thrashing around so desperately and so wildly that this cannot succeed. I'll finish by telling you what is the harshest interpretation that I've been hearing. And all the Lesheavarim, all the former chiefs,
all the formers.
The formers who are trying to take down Netanyahu for so long keep whispering in the ears of those still serving, one day you will have to take Netanyahu out of his office by force because he is a dictator. And some people are taking that seriously. And I heard today from a very serious journalist, he said, look, they're practicing to take out Netanyahu. Netanyahu is also, the unit that's protecting him is not regular police. And one asks himself, or that one person asked himself, and he's not alone, is there actually a danger that Shabak, the security service, Shin Bet, as you say in English, and their affiliates in the state attorney, internal affairs, all bunched around the same group who belong to the anti-Netanyahu camp, are they going to actually try and pull a military coup in the physical simple meaning of the phrase? I have to tell you, I doubt very much that anybody would go so far and so crazy.
Yeah, me too. When I was in Israel, I had a conversation with somebody who will remain nameless, but somebody you would recognize his name very easily. we talked about all this, and I wanted his opinion uh, because I was curious to know if he agreed with you about what's going on with the Feldstein arrests and everything else. And he got kind of philosophical about it, and he drew, a bell curve like this,
Hmm.
and he said the thing that you have to understand is that Israel's elite comes from the one end of the bell curve, so, the left end of the bell curve, and its views represent a minority of the population. The majority of the population is in the big part of the bell curve, and that's on all kinds of issues, about two-state solution, religious questions of religion, attitude toward tradition, and so on. And he said what we are going through right now is that Israel's elite is being replaced, and there's a new elite that's coming up, and is going to replace the old elite. And there's no simple way to go about this, but the old elite is fighting back. So all these issues, the Feldstein, the police, the arrest of the police commissioner, the judicial reform, they're all in one way or another the same conflict, refracted differently, and the each side, it has in terms of the issues it grabs hold of, it can have a better case or a worse case at any given moment. But all these things get magnified enormously because it's this fight over the rise of the new elite, which doesn't exist yet. That's the problem. I think we have the same thing here in America, actually.
That's what I was going to say. It's not a different fight in the United States. It's actually not a different fight in Europe either.
Yeah, yeah, and of course behind that also is the whole question of consent of the governed. The people on the old elite side, they don't really believe in consent of the governed. They think the masses are asses, and they shouldn't be given too much room to influence the big decisions of war and peace. And
Yeah, those of us who have at least some affiliation to academic work can marvel at the new discourse that these elites have produced, where democracy is most in danger by citizens. The real problem in democracy is citizens, and the question is how to control them so they don't ruin democracy. And if you look at his Israeli judicial jargon, they are never speaking about the will of the majority, only about the tyranny of the majority.
yeah,
And I think it's the same. It's the same in the United States, where when you look at the people, they are the deplorables. And the question is, how can we run things smoothly from a laptop in Starbucks without all these deplorables getting in the way?
of course
Okay,
the
Mike, we
problem.
have.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're going to say we're going to move on. I just want to say one thing. I don't love Itamar Ben-Gvir. I find him to be a bit of a clown and a kind of bomb thrower. Not the kind of person that I want to associate with. And it's clever of them to focus in on him because I'm sure lots of Israelis feel the same way, even people in the center right, when they look at Ben-Gvir. The other thing is that it's worth reminding everyone. I said here, this is a fact. I know the Australians and the British have prepared a sanctions package against Ben-Gvir. The Biden administration has been deliberating about whether to become. I'm sorry, the Canadians, the British, and the Australians have prepared a sanctions package. The Biden administration was deliberating about whether to associate itself with that package. This all happened before the election, and they were waiting for the election in order to roll this out. I'm sure. I assume I don't have any information about this. I assume that the election threw a wrench in the works, and everyone is now wondering. I don't know if you saw but Donald Trump threatened massive sanctions against or tariffs against Canada. So I think Justin Trudeau met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and reportedly he told Trump about the terrible damage that these tariffs would do to Canada if he were to impose them. And Trump jokingly responded that if Canada was if the Canadian economy is that dependent on the United States, maybe it should just become the 51st state with Trudeau being its governor.
I'll say
so, but with that kind of in that kind of atmosphere, they have to be thinking about whether to do this. But you have to wonder, and I don't want to become a conspiracy theorist here, but you have to wonder if this move inside Israel, Ben-Gvir, hasn't been done without some knowledge of these external. I can't be the only person in the world who knows that this is in the works.
Of course. There's doubtlessly this was connected to. We know that there are direct connections with, at least with the Biden administration, but possibly with other places too. I'll say just two short things about Ben-Gvir. He was considered a clown in many Israeli circles. If he's sanctioned by any foreign government, that will bring him a great boost. Apparently, he did more than people give him credit for, especially in these in the treatment of terrorist prisoners, which has become a deterrent. We know this now from the courts. And lastly, I don't know Ben-Gvir very well, but I'll give you just one surprising impression. You know, he's considered he's considered a messianic extremist. I met him on the birthday of Shefi Paz, who is a lesbian ex-leftist who heads the South Tel Aviv movement of the poor against illegal immigration. So we were at her birthday. Tess, don't get in the way of the camera, please. So we were at her birthday, and while I was speaking to Shefi Paz, I noticed Itamar Ben-Gvir conspiring with a group of young gay men from the south of Tel Aviv about what to do against illegal immigration. So next time they tell you about Itamar Ben-Gvir's homophobia, know that is inaccurate information.
My favorite picture of President Erdogan of Turkey is him sitting with Turkey's most famous transgender performer, and they're said to have, not rumored, they're said to have, you know, a very, very nice rapport. So politicians are politicians, and they know how to appeal to wide constituencies.
Although, you know, the transgender constituency of South Tel Aviv is not something that would register on your polling data on normal days. Yeah, Mike, we don't have time today because you are a very busy man, and so let's move to Syria, or shall we do the agreement first?
Let's go to the ceasefire and talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
And let's start with you, actually, because there's a lot of I have my view on it, but I know that I already sensed it came into force after I left Israel. But talking to people while I was there, I heard a lot of unease about it, including from people who are supporters of Prime Minister Netanyahu. So why don't you just describe for us the sense in your circles of the ceasefire?
First of all, people fear that this would be an end to the war and that this would be inconclusive. I am less worried about that, although I'm not happy with the ceasefire. But I've said on this program, I think for over a year now, that there is a hard limit to any concession an Israeli government can make in the north, because people will not return to their homes unless they feel secure. This ceasefire does not seem to abide by that condition. People are not going to feel safe and are not going to return home. The government is so far not making any great effort to convince them to do so. And so people are tacitly given to understand that this is a temporary move. Whenever you say 1701, this is I'm sorry, you took part in shaping it. This is considered a grand failure. And so
just for the record, I also took part in facilitating the Gaza withdrawal, and I got an award at the NSC for my role in which was, by the way, which was it was a trophy for participation. I thought it was really funny because I had virtually nothing to do with Gaza withdrawal, but I still got an award for it.
I should have. I supported that move that turned out so badly, but I supported Oslo before it. People now just remind me that I supported the lax economic policy towards Hamas and thought that we should not enter Gaza and topple it. And it's funny because that was practically the opinion of everyone, possibly excepting Avigdor Lieberman. But this is now held against me because, on Twitter, because here I was supporting Hamas, so I'm to blame for October 7. I have much graver responsibility for supporting the Oslo Accords and the unilateral withdrawal from Gaza. Of course, my responsibility is limited to voicing my opinion. I was not in government in any of these occasions, nor am I now. So 1701 was supposed to push Hezbollah north of the Litani. It was also supposed to endorse what was the name of the 1599? 1559, an earlier resolution which included disarming Hezbollah. So none of these things are going to happen now. People are generally thinking Netanyahu has 49 more days to survive with the Biden administration. Hopefully, Biden will now be dealing with the repercussions of his pardon of his son and be too busy to cause more trouble. But we have a very delicate period in which we know that this administration wants not only to advance the same causes, to push us back into the state preceding the war and the whole framework of what it calls the peace process, but also a passion to take revenge on Netanyahu, which basically took them for a ride. They tried to stop this war from the beginning, and he managed to postpone it and advance it towards the goals that Israel and he set for themselves. So we are all assuming that this very fragile ceasefire is designed to hold at least till Donald Trump enters the White House, at which point we will have a free hand to take the most minute infringement on the other side in order to start the war. I asked a high official if there would actually be a chance to stop the war, and he said, like this. So maybe he knows.
Not to start the war, restart the war.
To restart the war, yeah.
Yeah. So you and I, without going into details, we met with some senior officials, and I think the thing that really struck me from those meetings was the good mood that they were in. And that really influenced my own thinking about what's going on. I thought, Netanyahu issued a statement. I think it was last Wednesday.
Mike, whenever you talk to sources, you have to be aware that people are making a tremendous effort to impress us once they know that we're from Israel Update. So just make an allowance for that.
because we have the incredible reach of our podcast.
Exactly. And also we are as sane as possible under the circumstances.
And people value sanity under these circumstances. Yes. I lost my train of thought. I got it. I found my train of thought now. Netanyahu gave a statement last Wednesday, I think it was, when he was announcing the ceasefire. And he answered what he assumed would be all the criticisms of it. And I was deeply impressed by the statement. I think, he's very good at this anyway, but I thought it was a very, very honest and convincing statement of the situation. And basically, the conclusion that I have from all this is that the value of this ceasefire will be determined not by anything that happens in the next couple of weeks, but really by what happens after the inauguration of Donald Trump. If this ceasefire, the fear that the Israelis have is that this is a return to the old conception where Israel pulls back and Hezbollah is allowed to rebuild under the noses of UNIFIL and the Lebanese armed forces, and the Americans again begin restraining the Israelis, and Lebanon becomes effectively an Iranian-American condominium that Israel is only allowed to touch when America says it's okay. If we return to that, and once again Iran's monsters are able to build up themselves on Israel's borders, then this ceasefire is a failure. Absolutely. But Prime Minister Netanyahu said that his goal is to pause, these are my words, not his, but to pause the fighting in Lebanon so that we can now focus on the Iran front, and in particular on the Iranian nuclear program. And if he does that, and he said this is the goal, if he does that, with Donald Trump, he comes up with a plan to seriously degrade or destroy the Iranian nuclear program, and he does so in a timely fashion, then this ceasefire will, I think, be remembered as a maneuver within a larger war that achieved major goals.
But let me ask you this, Mike. If suppose that the best of all possible worlds materializes and we take out Iran's nuclear program with such efficiency that they would not be able to rebuild it for 30 years. Suppose they are on their knees. What happens in Lebanon with Hezbollah without them?
Well, we're already seeing it, I believe. And that brings us to our discussion of Syria. I think that Hezbollah will be significantly degraded and weakened. I don't think we can assume it will go away completely under any circumstances, and we can't assume that it won't be picked up by other actors as well. It's too valuable an asset to let it just disappear. None of these things in history, they never just disappear. They come back in a new guise.
Will they pose a threat to Israel, or just an annoyance?
I think without the Iranian support and the supply of the weapons, these disruptive military capabilities that Iran is supplying, I don't think they can be the same kind of threat. It's impossible to know what they're going to morph into in the future. You're never buying, the end to all conflict, the end to all claims. You're never going to get that. Israel in our lifetime is not going to know that, but Israel can know periods of relative calm and peace. The 90s and early 2000s. Those are good days.
And there's a good chance for that now, for the first time in decades. Ever since the threat of Hezbollah began to grow, Israel has been uneasy. Our situation in the Middle East may be fundamentally changing. And I just want to mention again, the contrast between the dark mood that I was in, I guess we were in the first months of this war, and the optimism now that exceeds anything we knew before October 7th. So,
yes, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. I have one thing to add to that. Go ahead.
מאז יצא מתוק. I don't know how to translate that to English, because it's such a strong idiom in Hebrew. From the fierce came out the sweet.
Yeah,
I guess, but it's biblical.
I don't think we have it. I don't know if we have such a phrase, but our astute and well-educated viewers will tell us in the comments, which they always
will.
Do.
I suspect it's biblical. I'm not sure, but we can trust our viewers on that. So off we are to Syria. What is going on?
Hold on. I wanted to say one thing about this.
Did you
What was
notice
it?
that I have never been able to make a transition in this show smoothly? Never, ever.
That's because
Not
you
even
say
once.
that's because your observations are so profound. They spark in me they spark in me reactions that the world needs to hear. But I actually lost my train of thought. I don't know what's going on here. So we'll move on to Syria.
That's a
Uh,
first. I did it. It's a
you did it.
first.
You did it by force. You did it by force.
No,
Uh,
Mike, you just haven't tested my force yet.
Oh
That
no, I know what I wanted to say. I got it now. I got it. I got it. Yes.
do
No,
be
you you
concise,
you
please, Doctor
you
Perez.
you said that you talked about your mood changing. I just want to point out the primacy of military power. Very simple thing. When I started my way as an analyst in the Middle East and academia, and I used to focus more on ideas and diplomacy and so on. I have come to see, especially in the Middle East, but just in general, military affairs, military balance is the number one driver. It's not everything. I don't want to be totally reductive, but it's the number one driver of international politics. And Israel, the big mistake of October 7th is not the intelligence failure. The big mistake is that they did not have the kind of military that can deliver a decisive victory in a short period of time. And Israel got sucked into it, still in it. It got sucked into a war of attrition with Iran, and it has no clear path to victory. This is the problem. This is the number one problem. Everything else is secondary. How does Israel get a military that can deliver a decisive victory in a relatively short period of time? That was Ben-Gurion's vision. Ben-Gurion, there he is. People always ask me who that figure is. That's a humorous representation of Ben-Gurion. Ben-Gurion's vision was take the fight to the enemy on his territory. The fight should be quick and it should end decisively in Israel's favor. It's crucial for all kinds of reasons, including the structure of Israeli society.
But we have also shown that, contrary to this theory, Israel can stand a long war if it needs to. That's a very important thing to our self-image, too. So it's not a.
It can stand a long war as long as the United States doesn't say no.
As it can stand a long war without the United States saying an explicit yes. How's that? Because
True.
we did
True.
not get an explicit yes for this war. You know, when
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. But that fact showed up the vulnerabilities of Israel, and if there wasn't Benjamin Netanyahu running the government, if it had been Benny Gantz or Ehud Barak or Olmert or any one of these guys, I'm not sure.
You even forgot to mention Lapid.
Lapid, yeah, Lapid. Any one of these guys, we'd be in a very different situation right now.
Exactly. Syria.
Okay, Syria. Our viewers, Gadi asked for a Syria explainer. So I would like to share the screen. Can I do that, or do you do that?
I don't want to give you such authority on this.
Okay, so you do.
Premature.
Yeah. I hope everyone noticed.
Yeah. So here's
I'm going to use the tyranny. You say tyranny instead of tyranny. The tyranny under which I live here at Israel Update.
Okay. Poor man that you are. So now what you see on the screen is a map of the situation in Syria. Mike, please explain.
I want to do a real simplification, because I think ultimately somebody famous, I want to look at, maybe I can ask the viewers for this. Somebody once said that war is very simple, but you have to work through the complexity to get to the simplicity. This is the same thing of international politics in general. I think, but you have to get to the right simplicity. You have to work through the complexity to get to the right simplicity. So I think I have the right simplicity, and I will explain it. Are you there?
Yeah.
I just got a
tell me where to put the cursor so I can.
sorry. I just got a telephone call that I had to turn off, and I lost the screen. Put the cursor up in the green part up there.
Okay,
The green part in the
just to orient people. This is Israel in the down corner. This is the Golan Heights. This is Damascus, which is the capital, and this is the north of Syria that is green.
But look at the dark green in northwest Syria. Sorry for those of you who are not watching this on YouTube or just listening to us. We're in the northwest quadrant up in Idlib, and this is where what are called the Syrian rebels. This is HTS is the main group. They're pushing down to Aleppo and then down further to Hama. This line of cities in western Syria, Aleppo, Hama, Homs, Damascus. That's what the Syrian regime calls vital Syria. That is the heartland of Syria as far as they're concerned. And now the rebels have taken Aleppo, which is the second largest city and the financial center of the country. So
you always surprise me with that phrase, financial center. You look at Syria, you don't. Financial center is not what comes to mind.
Well, no, okay. So it's it's not Antwerp, it's not New York, it's not Tokyo, London, but it still is it is the economic hub of the country, such as it is, despite its weakened economy. So it matters to the regime. This is a huge blow to the regime. The key thing here is the regime is backed by Iran and Russia. The HTS is backed by the Turks to one degree or another. The Turks are saying that they have nothing to do with this. I would take that with a big grain of salt. There are analysts out there who are actually taking those claims seriously. I don't take them seriously. I'm not saying that this is actually being run out of Ankara, but HTS could not have done this without a green light from Ankara. And there's lots of signs that they got more than just a green light. Like there were reports, pretty credible reports, that the Assad army couldn't communicate. The headquarters couldn't communicate with the tactical units because of electronic warfare. These are not assets. Electronic warfare assets are not things that HTS has. The Turks have that, and so on. The Turks are also using, behind the HTS campaign against the regime, the Turks are also deploying the Syrian National Army, these are Syrians. They're a Syrian proxy of Turkey. This is Turkey's answer to the Wagner group of the Russians, and they're deploying them to take certain areas that are controlled by the PKK in Syria, PKK being the Kurdish separatists who want to break apart Turkey into two different states, a Turkish state and a Kurdish.
So just to those of our viewers who are not au courant on all that, there are Kurds within Syria that are affiliated with a Kurdish faction which is against Erdogan's regime.
Absolutely. It's important to understand, actually, that there are three major enclaves of Kurdish enclaves in Syria, and those enclaves those communities, Syrian Kurdish communities, they speak the same dialect as the Turkish Kurds, which is not, for example, true of Kurds in Iraq. Kurds in Iraq speak a totally different dialect, but they don't feel themselves to be part of the Turkish Kurdish community. All right, so this is Turkey. To get to the simplicity here, this is Turkey versus Russia and Iran. And it's not a zero-sum conflict. The Turks are not trying to destroy Iran. They're not trying to destroy Russia. They are trying to achieve their goals in Syria, their national interests in Syria. There are two primary interests that they have. One is to defeat all of the efforts of the Kurds of the PKK in Syria to create an autonomous Kurdish region or regions on Turkey's border. That's one thing they want to do. Second thing they want to do is they want to return all of the refugees. There are some 5 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. It's become a major domestic political issue. President Erdogan has taken a principled position on this, saying that we owe it to these people to host them. His opponents in the election, in the presidential election, called for returning them. There's enormous pressure on the Turkish government to return the refugees, but they have to create the conditions in Syria that will allow the return. The Turks have been trying to get some satisfaction from the Assad government and the Russians on this issue, and they haven't gotten it. Those rebels they're supporting also want to topple. Their end game is to topple Bashar al-Assad completely and get rid of the of the Assad regime.
To what extent does Turkey support getting rid of Assad?
That's an impossible question to answer because their proxies want to topple Assad. Turkey historically has called for the end of the Assad regime. Now they want political reform. Exactly what they would accept, what the Turkish government would accept in the end, it might accept some kind of something short of that, but it's tied to those groups that want to topple Assad. That's an ambiguous question. There are the official statements of the Turkish government, and there are the clear priorities that they have, which are prevent Syria from being a base for Kurdish separatist operations against Turkey and returning the refugees. Now, the bottom line here is that this all works in Israel's favor because this is a huge blow to Iran, and because the Russians and the Iranians worked together to prop up Assad, and the Russians brought in the air power, but the ground forces were brought in by the Iranians, including Hezbollah. So all of this was made possible by the near destruction of Hezbollah, or the severe degrading of Hezbollah by the Israelis. That created the vacuum that the Turks are exploiting here. So I see this. I have always seen Turkey and Israel as the key allies of the United States in the Middle East. There are lots in the pro-Israel community who do not agree with me about this. It's a common argument. I'm sure you've heard me have it with people, I presume.
You had it on my Israeli podcast with Dan Shiftan.
Oh, with Dan Shiftan, yeah, that's one amazing, because Dan Shiftan is a realist. He sees Turkey as an enemy of Israel. He sees advances by the Turk as advances for Muslim Brotherhood and jihadism and so on. And there's no doubt these HTS, this group that Turkey is supporting, its roots are in Al-Qaeda in Syria. It moved away from the global jihad, but these are political Islamists. There's no doubt about it. However, they are a political Islamists of a different stripe than Al-Qaeda, for sure. One of their members, I don't know if you saw, called up some representative of the Israeli media, I believe it was Khan Radio, and said, "We like Israel. We like Israel. Don't worry," because their number one enemy. Regardless of what they think about Israel, regardless of what they say about Zionism, their 3-meter fight is against the Assad regime and the Iranians. They are the enemy of Iran, and so we need to see this, I think, in that context. There are people, and Gadi, you and I heard some arguments like this when we were together in Israel. There are people in Israel and outside of Israel who dream.
Well, we had a technical problem on Mike's end, so we'll finish this discussion next week. Just to sum up what Mike said, the interesting thing for our purpose is the fact that Turkey and Iran are having frictions in Syria, and that was partly facilitated by the fact that Israel considerably weakened Hezbollah and the Iranian axis. So for more details on this next week, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you as usual well, maybe as usual is not the right phrase. As usual next week, not necessarily on Tuesday, but we will try to make it on Tuesday. So thanks for watching.